I'm a guy that's 25. Lego Star Wars is my life. I like Ryan Johnson. I'm Rich Boy J. Hello boyos, Rich Boy J here, back in with another video, and this is going to be update number 65 of the LEGO Star Wars Starkiller base MOC build series. Before we get into the video, I want to give a very special thanks to those of you who contributed to the live streams via super chats or donations. I sincerely appreciate all of your support. We had a really good amount this week, so those guys are Brickfreak, Axidroid, On the Brick, Brix Films, Brent's Bricks, Chagun Marshall, theBEARBOY, Techno Union Broadcast, Elias Jones, Numpkin Barbosa, 9, Xavier Sorrent, Mark Couture, Tesch, and LEGGO Myke. You all are so awesome. Your support is super important right now, especially when we're in crunch time with this build, trying to get it done before Brick Rodeo this summer. I really can't understate how helpful you guys are, so thank you so much to that. And if those of you who are not watching the live streams, I definitely urge you to do so. It is a great opportunity for you to not only see the build early, but to also hang out with some boyos and talk Star Wars. Seriously, come on, like what more could you want than that? This week was a very interesting one. I didn't get as much progress done as I wanted to, which was super unfortunate because I ran out of Technic pens of all things. Like the one thing I've probably never run out of in my MOC building career. Of course, working on this massive Technic structure behind me for this Oscillator building, I ran out pretty quickly, which was super annoying. I placed a few orders to try to get some in, but it just was not working out in my favor. So you guys are going to basically see kind of how that manifested itself throughout the week. That being said, I am pretty happy with the amount of progress I did get done. I have a very clear idea of not only the shape of the Oscillator building, but also how all the inner or sub angles are going to work out together. And that's probably the most important thing. Like, even if you aren't able to make a ton of progress actually building, just getting an idea of how everything's going to flow together can really make a big difference as far as your progress in the MOC, because I know once I do get those parts in, I'll be good to go. There's not too much thinking involved that I have to do moving forward. But you guys are going to see all of that, so let's go ahead and jump into the MOC. All right, guys, diving right into the Oscillator building, you can see that I've built a Technic frame for the building. It's basically a half hexagon sitting right here, and this took a considerable amount of time to figure out. The main concern was really just getting these angles to line up in a way that could be structurally sound, which is basically to say in a way where you had a decent amount of connection points. I was able to end up with 1, 2, 3, 4 here. I had a fifth one right here, but it was actually stressing the parts too much, so I had to remove it. But I do think these 4 should be good enough for the purposes of this building. As many connection points as you can have is always best case scenario for something like this. That's just more places for the thing to hold together and hopefully not fall apart, because there's going to be a lot of weight on this building. I really want to make sure the frame of this thing can support the weight that's going to be on top of it. It's going to have a full ceiling and roof area, and it'd be super problematic if this was, you know, fragile and wobbling all the time. I'd be pretty freaked out, honestly. So this is the design I came up with. You can see that this basically spans 3 gray base plates and width, which is basically the same width as the trench section. So the trench walls will basically come up, I think, like right here. That's why I had that piece marked off, and the same on the other side. And then this will be sitting basically at ground level with the trench. It's not going to be connected to these base plates right here. It's going to be raised up like most of the other sections, but I figured it's not really worth it right now to worry about that. I really just want to get the frame of this building done, and then if it's as sturdy as I hope it is, which it should be, then I can always elevate it where it needs to be. But for right now, I just want to get the general shape of this thing knocked out, and hopefully it all works out. So I got this frame right now. It's pretty solid. I think it's gonna hold up, at least for testing purposes. And then as we move further and further along and I finalize certain designs with this, I'll end up reinforcing it, probably adding basically another layer of these Technic bricks on top of it. So there'll be, you know, this bottom layer here, and I might add a second one just to really make it sturdy. The other thing I got started on are the walls over here. So you'll see these 2 sections lined up right here. They're obviously not the right color. Don't judge me for that. I just grabbed what was nearest to me to basically figure out how this angle was going to work out. And I'm very happy with it, actually. You can see right here that I'm using these panel pieces to basically get a nice clean angle around here. It's going to be nice and smooth and clean once we get the wall fully built up. And honestly, pretty seamless. I think it's going to look really awesome seeing a big wall like this and this angle come together so nicely. So that was my biggest goal in figuring this out. This is roughly going to be the height of this lower level of the Oscillator building. So I'm going to have to build some walls basically all around this to accommodate it. My next steps are going to be basically building up some Technic structures inside of this. They're going to basically come up to this height, maybe a little bit taller. And that's basically going to be the structure that, you know, the next level is going to need to sit on. So I'm going to use some Technic pieces to elevate it. I actually had a pretty massive order of these Technic bricks come in this week. I ordered like 1,000 1x14 dark gray Technic bricks, so those are going to be super helpful for this building, and hopefully I'll even have some left over for the rest of the build if I want to reinforce the ground sections. So that's what I'm working on right now. This is looking pretty good, but we're going to go ahead and move forward. We're going to get some Technic structures built up basically all around this to get a nice solid foundation for the next level of this Oscillator building, and we'll see what we come up with, guys. So let's go ahead and do it. Now, as you guys can see, this escalated pretty quickly. I've just been working on getting a decent structure for this building here in today's episode. Now, for the first time in my building experience ever, I actually just ran out of Technic pins in my Technic piece bin, which is super annoying because I bought all of these Technic bricks right here that I was going to be using for this, and I basically hit a point where I just didn't have any more Technic pins, these little connectors here, to connect all of these together. So I ended up having to scavenge for some. I had to look for them in just random buckets of parts I had, and when you get to that point where it's something like a Technic pin that you're missing and you're having to look high and low for them, it's honestly almost not even worth it because you're just going to need so many of it, and the effort you'd put into finding like 10 of them isn't really going to make a big difference if, you know, you need hundreds and hundreds of them to actually make significant process on the build. But I did try my best to find some, and that's really how I was even able to get to this point. And you can see that it's actually looking pretty good. It's starting more and more to resemble the actual Oscillator building from Starkiller base. If it's not apparent already, my basic goal was to have, you know, this lower part of the frame basically be where this outer wall starts, and then it slants in pretty much up to this second layer right here. And then this is just, you know, going to brace this top section all the way across. And then you have the protruding section right here. I went ahead and started kind of playing around with these angles on the corners here just to see how those would line up. And I'm actually pretty happy with it. The biggest goal with that was to just make sure that there was a consistent gap going all the way up. And I'm thinking this is probably going to be the height of the building. And I mean, it ended up falling off on this side, but it did actually work out pretty well. I think they come apart ever so slightly as they get to the top, but nothing that's going to keep me up at night. Unfortunately, this is actually not even where these are going to go. There's like a flat layer right here, and then the sloping starts. If you actually look right here, you can see on the building, there's this little section in here that I have to build, and then there's a sloped section up top. So I really just wanted to kind of play with the angles just to get an idea of whether or not what I've built so far is going to work. And the good news is it's looking like it is actually going to work. The annoying news is I'm kind of limited with what I can actually move forward with in terms of the structure of this thing. Just for this episode, I am going to try my best to find as many Technic pins as possible. You can see I even started using these 3-length Technic pins where I would normally use 2-length ones just to kind of conserve some. But there's still only even so many of those that I have to be able to do that moving forward. But I'm super happy with the way this thing is looking. You can see even already, if we take a look back at this giant building, it's going to be a big boy. It's going to be very tall, and I love it. I love it for that. And if it's not even apparent, the ground level is actually going to be right here. So imagine the bottom of this building right here is actually going to be sitting up here. So the building itself will probably be about that tall, almost as tall as me, while it's sitting on the table as well as on its elevated platform. So that is just absolutely insane. But I think this is going to work out. It was a super frustrating process just trying to figure out exactly how I was going to accomplish this. You know, which parts of it were going to be modular, you know, just little things like that you have to consider, especially when you're going to transport something like this. But I think if I have, you know, this beefed up Technic structure that kind of holds everything together, transporting it really should not be an issue. I'll probably just end up pulling all the big walls and panels off when I transport it, and just the Technic structure hopefully should be able to hold itself together. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to basically try to get, you know, this section all the way across here, going all the way across the entire build, maybe even build up another layer. So, you know, I have that flat section in here represented, and we'll see kind of where it goes from there. Maybe even start building some of the slope section up there. As it's become very apparent to me in this episode, this is really going to be a bunch of structure building, maybe not necessarily a bunch of, you know, the details and stuff that you guys have become accustomed to. But I think this is actually a really fun experience here, just getting to show you guys me building a giant skeleton of what will eventually be a giant building. So I'm going to go ahead and just keep, you know, building with this Technic and see how far I can make it throughout this thing. And I'll get back to you guys as soon as possible. So let's go ahead and do it. All right, guys, I think I'm tapping out for this week. I have pretty much stretched my Technic collection as far as it'll go by way of those Technic pins. I searched high and low. I went to my bin of just random sets that I plan on parting out, and I took all the Technic pins that I could find, and this is what I ended up with. I really wish there could have been more. I wish that, I mean, come on, like, I never imagined I'd run out of Technic pins of all things. But such is the state of affairs. I placed multiple orders for Technic pins, none of which showed up on time. So this is what we have to deal with for this week's update. So I guess the good news is this is actually a good amount of progress, I think. I think this is a good basis and structure for the building. I know a lot of it looks just like a bunch of scaffolding, which is actually kind of cool because it looks like we're constructing an actual building here. But the latest thing I did was basically add another layer of these Technic bricks that kind of come out this way. So we basically have this flat section finally represented in the building. This is something that should wrap around all the way on all three sides of this thing. We just didn't have enough Technic pins to accomplish that. However, we were able to at least get this side done, so I have a pretty good idea of how this is going to work. And it actually worked out kind of perfectly because basically from this plate to the bottom plate is 10 studs, so that's a nice even amount of studs that I can use to basically start covering that up between this week and next week, get some greebling in there, and then hopefully build out the rest of it. I also just went ahead and placed these slopes right here. I don't know why, I mean, it's a pretty insignificant thing, but at least for me, it helps me visualize what the final shape of this thing is going to look like. Just being able to see that top section, it helps me envision, you know, how those sloped roof parts of this thing are going to look. So hopefully this doesn't just look like a giant mess to y'all. Hopefully it looks somewhat like what it's going to look like in the past. Hopefully it looks somewhat like what it's supposed to look like once we get this thing done. I'm hoping you can visualize what this structure is going to look like at the very end. Before we head out, I do just want to take you guys actually around to the other side and just give you the lowdown on exactly what's going to be going on inside here. So this is the inside of the building. You can see that the shape is represented on the inside as well. My idea is basically to bring the floor out probably to where this gray base plate stops, and I'll have all the space in here to basically build up, have, you know, the walkways where Han and Chewie place the bombs. There'll be a few staircases, and then Rey and Finn will be probably somewhere up here in the building. And then down here will be that long walkway where Kylo and Han Solo have their meeting. Once again, this is going to be elevated pretty much as high as like the trench section was. So the top of the trench is basically where this is going to be sitting, which is almost honestly to like maybe right here, or even right here. So even though the walkway is going to be right here, it more realistically is going to be like right here. And then there's going to be a ton of space going down to the very bottom of it that'll make this thing look very deep. That's my goal, you know, to not have it looking like it's not that far of a fall. You need to be able to see and feel the pain that Han Solo felt whenever he fell. And then, of course, on either side, we're going to have, you know, some wall greebling and decorations and stuff like that. I'm going to have to really look hard to see what those look like because the walls in that scene are all very dark. But, I mean, I've made enough Starkiller base walls where I have some cool design templates I can probably just reuse if I get to the point where I'm like, I just can't see anything. But otherwise, I'll try my best to recreate the walls inside of this building. So hopefully that gives you guys a good rundown of what to expect from this building moving forward. This wasn't necessarily the progress that I expected to have for this week, but it is something. It is, you know, we have a skeleton of a building here, and once we start getting the panels actually built up, I think you guys are really going to see not only just how massive this thing is, but how, I don't know, detailed it is, how kind of cool of a shape it is. So hopefully you are able to follow along and you're at least a little bit excited to see that moving forward. But that's all I got for you guys this week, so let's move to the ending segment. And that's going to finish up this week's progress, guys. As always, in the comment section below, let me know what you're thinking of the build so far. One thing I'm really interested in knowing is from the pictures that I've shown you of this oscillator building in the film and the actual build progress that I've made on it so far, is it yet obvious, like, exactly what I'm going for when it comes to this build? Like, is it resembling the oscillator building at all? I'd really love to know just kind of how you guys are seeing things, because I know when I build things, I can very easily visualize what I'm going for, but maybe that's not so obvious to you guys. So I'd love to know, just with the progress that I've got done so far, are you guys able to tell what it is I'm going for with this build? So between this update and the next update, my goals are going to be to, one, finish out the frame completely. Like, that's something that I just need to get done. Those Technic pins should be coming in fairly soon, which means I can pretty much get all the Technic work done that I need to get done. And then what that also means is I can start working on the exterior panels that are going to be on the building. Hopefully between this update and the next update, I'll have at least all of the exterior side panels done. The roof, I'm not really expecting to get done. That'll probably be one of the last things I do. But if I can finish up all the exterior panels, I think that'll put us on a good track for getting this MOC somewhere close to done before Brick Rodeo. So that's all I got for you guys this week. If you like what I do, go ahead and support the video by smashing that like button, support the channel by smashing that subscribe button, and I'll be back again